When we solve rational equations, there are two types that you could have. And on this worksheet, numbers 1 through 4 show the first type, where you have a fraction equal to only one other fraction. And problems 5 through 10, if you notice, you have two fractions being either added on the left or on the right, and then they're equal to another one, or they're equal to another one that's being added to something else. So there's more than just two to start. So I'm going to walk you through numbers 1 through 4 first. Whenever we do this, whenever we have one fraction on the left equal to one fraction on the right, we are going to crisscross multiply. So we're going to multiply crisscross like this. And the only thing to really advise you on, since you have done cross multiplication like this before to solve, is that you just need to put in parentheses. So when you do that, you are going to get 4 parentheses x minus 2 equal to 1 times 3x, which is just 3x. Now what terms in this situation, it's a linear function that you just go ahead and solve. Distribute the 4, subtract the 4x, divide by -1. So x equals 8. Now, when we solve, we do need to check our answers because we could also have extraneous solutions for this. And all you need to do is make sure that that 8 doesn't give you 0 on the denominator. So sometimes what I also say that we do first is, before we even start, tell me what my domain restrictions are. So up here I would say, well, I have an x on the bottom with 3. 3 times what gives me 0? Well, 3 times 0, so x can't equal 0. So sometimes I will do that first. That way I know when I get my answer, I check it with my domain restriction, and since they're not the same number, I know this 8 is good to go. So let's do that with number 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is write out a domain restriction. Now, in number 2, I know I said it equal to a fraction, but every whole number is a rational number, which means it is a whole number fraction because we can write it all over 1. And then down here, I need to say, okay, well, 2 times what gives me 0 on the denominator? Well, 0, so x can't be 0. So I'm going to hold this up here for a second as I solve, and then I'm going to go back and make sure that I don't get 0 when I go back and solve. So put my parentheses in, cross multiply, and I get 3x plus 2 equal to 4x. I'm going to solve, I'm going to subtract 3x, and x equals 2. 2 isn't 0, so that's good to go. In number 3, we're going to say, okay, well, x can't equal positive 2 because 2 minus 2 on the denominator here gives me 0. Now I'm going to cross multiply. 3 times 3x is 9x equal, put my parentheses. 1 doesn't obviously change it, so it's still just going to be x minus 2. I subtract x to the other side, and then I divide by 8. So we have x equal to -1/4, which is not 2, so this is good. Okay, in number 4, we actually have 2 numbers for a domain restriction. So we have x can't be -2, and it can't be 3. So we're going to come back and make sure when we solve we don't have -2 or 3 as an answer. But if we do, we know that it's extraneous. So we're going to cross multiply, and I get -6 times x minus 3 equal to 5 times x plus 2. I distribute, and I get -6x plus 18 equal to 5x plus 10. So I'm going to bring 6 to the right just so that I can make the x's negative and get or positive and get 11x. Subtract 10 and I get 8 equals 11x. And x equals 8 over 11, which cannot simplify and is not -2 or 3, so that is good. So number 5 is the first problem that isn't a fraction equal to a fraction, so we need to do it a little bit differently. I'm still going to say that x can't equal 0 right here, and it can't equal -2 right here. Alright, so now what I need to do is I need to identify the LCD. So my LCD for this one is going to be 4x and then times x plus 2 because all three are different. So then I'm going to go through and I'm going to figure out, each fraction, what it needs so that I can have the LCD. So for the first one, I'm going to multiply it by 4 times x plus 2. I'm going to squeeze it in here. I'm running out of some space. On the second one, I'm going to just multiply by 4x. And on this right one, I'm going to multiply it by x times x plus 2. Okay, so let's rewrite all this because it's going to start to look messy. So, because I have a 2 already here in the numerator and I need that 4, that 4 is in front, I have 8x plus 2 plus 4x, because it's 4x times 1, equal to 1 times, so it's x times x plus 2. So, all of these fractions are all over the LCD. So only with solving, so only when there's an equal sign, since everything is going to be divided by the same thing, meaning the LCD, and when you solve for x, what you can do is after they all, meaning all three of these fractions, these rational fractions, after all of these have the same denominator, we can cross out the denominator and then just solve for x in the numerator. So that means I'm just solving the problem 8 times x plus 2 plus 4x equal to x plus 2. I'm just going to solve for x now. So I'm going to distribute the 8. And then I'm going to distribute the x. So since we just created a quadratic over here on the right side, all of the left needs to come over to the right, which gives us x squared minus, what's that, 12, so minus 10x minus 16. Well, it's a quadratic and we need to solve it. So if we either can factor, we can complete the square, we can use our graphing calculator, we can do the quadratic formula. So this actually does not factor, so we're going to have to do the quadratic formula. So we have 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 4 times negative 16 all over 2. So this actually simplifies into 11.40 and negative 1.40. It's ugly, it's something that we had to round, but this is allowed as the answer. And you are just rounded to decimal places. And this last thing to note is that up here in our domain restriction, we didn't get 0 or negative 2, so these answers are correct and are okay.